as we speak here, the second hour of the debate among Republican candidates for nomination for the presidency is taking place. So I think we should all count our blessings. Something very different, the commentators tell us, about this term of debates, and that is the emotional involvement in both parties on the part of supporters to their candidates. The issues haven't even been fully explored, haven't even scratched the surface, and people are taking extraordinary steps to make sure that their candidates are elected. Something similar in the church too, I guess. We have some Catholics who are fallen away and maybe not keeping up with the norms and the rather challenging norms of our faith. But they're determined at any cost to justify their absence. Some might say it's a defense mechanism, but just as the political adherents, no matter what the candidate does or doesn't do, they will not leave that loyalty behind. And so with some of our own members of the church, rather than take issue with the teachings of the church and the traditions of the church and how they might have failed, how the church might well have failed them, they are like the youngsters on either side of the street that Jesus speaks about. Nothing will satisfy them. Nothing will satisfy them. They will find faults in Catholics and in the church, and there are faults all over the place in each of us and in our church. I always say, if you want to find a perfect church, join it, and it won't be perfect anymore. And so that should be of no surprise to us. But that's why I think the Roy Pettifield's presentations this afternoon were extraordinary. And how to deal with these pastoral situations in a responsible and compassionate way, leaving room for God's grace to work through your kindness and through your generosity. But you're on the front lines, you ministers who work in each of our parishes here, to come to grips with this, with the young adults who have children and aren't having them baptized, with others who can point to some slight when they were in grammar school or in a parish when they got married or at a funeral. It's a challenge for us. And it's always been a challenge for the church. Paul writes to Timothy in Ephesus and says there are factions, young Timothy. You just become the new bishop there. Let me tell you, there are differences, there are factions, there's bitterness. But whatever you do, stress the unity of the church and communion in the church. For it is the household of God, of the living God, the God who is the pillar and foundation of truth. This is our church, with all its challenges. The church of the living God, the pillar and foundation of truth. And I think you would not be here this evening unless you were totally convinced of that. And thank God for the grace that has brought you to this point and that sustains you in this point. And St. Paul speaks of the great mystery of our devotion to the church. And it really is. It really is a great mystery. We celebrate the saints Cornelius and Cyprian. Cornelius was a pope in the year 250s, the mid-3rd century. His contemporary and ally was Cyprian of Carthage, a good distance from Rome. But both convinced that in the church was the truth of Christ and the gospel survived. And there was an anti-pope named Novitian who, because Christians in droves during persecution were lining up to the pagan temples to worship false gods, and then when things settled down again, then they showed up on the church door and knocked. They want to be readmitted. And Novitian was a hardliner. He said, absolutely, God does not forgive that. God will never forgive such a renunciation of the faith. And it was Cornelian who insisted that God's mercy extended even to those who have lapsed. And he emphasized, along with Cyprian, the unity of the church, which is a gift of God. Bishop Cyprian wrote to Pope Cornelius, and they were both martyred within years of each other in the mid-3rd century. No one can have God as father who does not have the church as his mother. There is but one God, one Christ, and but one episcopal chair originally founded by Peter on the Lord's authority, citing the place of the Bishop of Rome in maintaining and bringing together the unity of the universal church. That unity, we know, has been fractured many, many times over, and we still pray for the grace of God for restoration. We know what happened since the Reformation, when we had one church in the East and one church in the West, and the split that took place after the Protestant Reformation. Very dramatic these days in the military. When I was Archbishop of the military, I was the endorser for all Catholic priests in all the uniformed services and all the chaplains in the VA hospitals. One for all the Catholics, the Catholic clergy. There are over 200 endorsing agents for non-Catholic Christians. And every year there's another split here and there, another 5 or 10 added, because of the unity of the church that is founded on Peter and comes about by the grace of God. My friends, we'll have a chance to see that unity dramatized later this week and over the next 10 days as Pope Francis makes his apostolic journey to Cuba and to our own beloved land. There's one episcopal chair originally founded on Peter by the Lord's authority. Let's pray for the success of Peter's successor and the ultimate unity of all who would share our one faith and one hope and one baptism. And let us thank God for the gift of faith that is ours and the opportunity that is yours, each of you, to spread that gift of faith to others.